first air raid.
Yeah, the first air raid. It was at night, and all of these. There was a Japanese bombers, and there was some fighter planes. And we were supposed to be shooting at these things. We go out there and here was this plane. I mean, he looked like he was about 6 inches long, way up high. And he just rolled it over and started down at us, and those tracer bullets start coming, and they're coming over our head, and I had him right in the crosshairs. Mm-hmm. And we kept saying, ask permission to fire, ask permission to fire. He's getting closer and closer. Now, sooner or later, he's going to get this thing lined up. And finally, when that man said, commence firing, I lost that plane.
Oh.
To this day, I don't know where that plane went. These guys, the loaders, beat me over. To the right, mm-hmm. Crank over to the right, left or whatever, and there's planes all around them. And all at once, this one came fairly close. The guy started shooting at it, and but then all at once I got myself together. Mm-hmm. But I never forgot that first time that you say, what was it, fear? I don't know. I just plain froze. Nothing was happening. It wasn't in my sight. He was probably there. I just didn't see him. Mm. And it's a very dangerous situation to be in. Somebody shot him down. But that was the first one that I had seen shot. And I was amazed when that thing was hit and caught fire, and these guys were all cheering and cheering, and I watched him come over and hit in the water. And I thought, there's a man in that plane.
Yeah.
And it is amazing what horrible things happen to you in war. Your fear can cause you to hate, because you hate what they represent. They represent death. And I remember one night we were going to make a landing the next morning, and I went up on the deck and I was all by myself. And there was these ammunition magazines close to every gun, and they were about so long and about so wide, and I was laying on top of one. I was watching those stars go back and forth. And I was thinking about the next morning, and I thought, there's not one person in this world that I know, not one person that knows me other than what's on this ship. Not one person knows where I am, and nobody gives a damn. That was the feeling, and I thought, what a horrible place to be in. Because every time, you always think, this might be it. And there's a strange thing that happens when someone close to you gets shot. Now, you can watch all the movies you want, and these guys get so concerned about that guy that got hit. That's not the way it is. Because there is a feeling that you have. I'm glad it was him and not me. Now, I'm not saying you don't care for the guy. And that feeling haunts you, brother. And it takes you a little while to get over it. But we got stuck on the beach on one of our landings we made. We were landing the 77th Infantry Division on one end of the island, and the Marines were landing on the other end, another bunch of ships. And it was the island name of it was Aishima. And it was one big flat long island, and right in the middle of it was a mountain. And we watched the planes the night before we landed. And those dive bombers and the day before, really, we got in there late in the day, and we sat way back. We could see. I saw a plane drop a bomb on the top of that island, and I thought, boy, that tore the whole top off of it. The wind came by and blew the smoke, and you couldn't even tell the thing had hit it. They were coral reef island, and there were Japs that hide in those coral reef tunnels and things. And so we got stuck. When we went in, there was some bad surveying or some bad information because as we went in to land those people on the beach, there was a reef in there and we didn't see it. And we made it to the beach, but we couldn't get off. And so they called us and told us that they were going to send the Army back down there because the guys had gone and taken that territory, but they couldn't. The caves and everything was full of Japs, so they came down and they drove foxholes, 3 foxholes deep, with all these soldiers in them. Said, now you're pretty well protected from the front, but the rear of this thing is your baby. You're going to have to watch it. Well, there was no lights. See, at wartime you had no lights on. And when I was, and so at this particular time they put me on lookout duty. They had guys looking on the side, all the way back, and I was on the back end back there. And they gave us an M1 rifle, and they said, now, if you see anything swimming in the water, you shoot at it, because these Japs will swim out you with. At this time in the war, it was suicide bombers were really thick, and so we go back there and standing there looking, and I saw a man swimming, and I mean I could even see him swimming right toward us. Pull that rifle up and fire off a few rounds at him, and then he back out. First thing you know, he same place. Back in he came. Kept doing this over and over. When the watch ended, told the next guys, now you gotta watch. Well, that shooting went on all night long. Went out there the next morning, and what we saw was a buoy out there with a flag on it, and we'd shot thunder out of that thing. But fear will make you see things that aren't there. And I saw that guy swimming.
Wow.
Yep.
That's freaky.
Next morning, though, we stayed there. They never got us off till late in the day, so they had a cleanup squad going around. They had a translator with them, and these soldiers, and they were find caves, and they would yell back in there with the translator, if there's anybody in there, please come out. We'll treat you humanely. We won't do anything. Well, this one family came out, and as soon as they came out, the first thing they did, they gave them water and candy bars. And they were dumbfounded. They said, oh, if we would only known this, we wouldn't have had a Harry Carey ceremony for our daughter last night. 16-year-old daughter. They had her commit suicide the night before because they were afraid of what the American troops would do to them. Because that's what they did to our troops, down in the death march in Bataan. And one this nobody would come out. They said, we know you're in there. Now either come out or we're going to put the flamethrower in there. And so they shot that flamethrower back in there. And about maybe 20 yards down there, a guy jumped up, and evidently there was had a hole over there, and he was on fire. And so guy threw up the rifle. Let him go.
Nah.
So he burned up. And anyway, they got us off there, and had to put the thing in dry dock again. Put new screws on it. We got stuck on the beach one other time, and it took 3 ships to pull us off.
Now, like when you guys would land, would you jump off mostly Army or was it Marines or?
We hauled more. We never hauled any Marines. We hauled the 77th Infantry Division, and sometimes we hauled engineers, and but you could land one bunch and pick up somebody else because everything was so organized. But we had 2 small boats on our ship, and the APAs, who handles Army personnel, they handle a lot of Marines and a lot of. Now they would take our small boats, And I was in the, we had 3 crews and 2 boats. So every time I didn't have to go. Once in a while I'd get out of it. And you would go over there, and if I were going to haul troops in, and they would send ours over to join this whatever, and they'd load you up with troops, and then you'd go around and around and around till they give the thing, and then when you're going around this thing, they'd line you up, and then you'd all just sweep in there and land. And I would tell you what, I would rather be in the first load that goes in than the ones after that, simply because the first load that goes in, if the guy driving the boat is rambunctious and hits that beach hard, he gets stuck somewhat. Then when he backs out, what he does, he digs a hole with these propellers that in the sand, and it makes a deep spot. It'll be so shallow, then deep. And these soldiers come in there, and man, first thing you know, you're slowing down, and the first place you hit sand, it may not be into the beach. Just as this, boy, as far as we go, they jump off, and some of them go in over their head. But it was a real dangerous thing. One funny thing we saw when after the war, first thing we did was we occupied Japan. So we hauled the troops up there, and and we hauled a lot of their equipment on our ship. Not so many troops as we did. We hauled the troops that was driving the equipment. But so we went in and made a landing on the beach, and we just stayed there. So the war was over. But I tell you what, on the way up there, we had a convoy, and at this time the lights were on. And if we weren't at the head of the convoy and it was ship, the line that I was in was the ship as far as you could see in the front, as far as you could see back. And we went up there and landed in Japan. And the whole bunch of LSTs, we landed, and we were the last LST on the line. And from here on was other ships unloading things. Well, these small boats, we'd sit there and watch these small boats come in and get stuck on the beach. And had those pools there. Well, there was a small boat came in, an LSM or LCM. We had LCVP. It was a lot smaller than the LCM. LCMs carried several men. So they get over there on this boat, and it had an admiral, it had commanders, it had everything. And we were just sitting up there watching them, and this boat comes sailing in there, and hit the land, and we said, hey, watch this, because we'd seen boats stuck down, and we knew we were familiar with those holes. So this guy looked like he was about a commander. He said, "I'll go first, sir," because he had admiral on there. Yeah. He went in. When he stepped off of that thing, all that you could see was his hat. He come up sputtering, and they pulled him up, and we're sitting up there just laughing our head off of it, and that admiral looked up there at us. He was laughing too. So then he had to go back with the boat to the ship. But it was funny. See that guy's hat floating on the water down there. Took a guy in another boat crew, went over there to take some, I don't even remember what island it was, some island there shortly after the war ended. And and the war was over this time. We had a bunch of, they have a meeting, and every time you went to a place, you would take some officers off of your ship, and they'd take officers of all these other ships in the convoy, and they would go over there and they would have their meeting. Well, went over there, and this boy on the other boat, his name was Cox, and he was from Marietta High, and he was standing up on the rail of his boat, and all at once, he fell off right down into the boat. I said, what are you doing down there? And he said, why, somebody shot me. Shot you? Yeah, and there was blood running down through there. A guy up the beach, you're used to shots. So shots, you hear a shot, you didn't think anything about it. Some guy, some sailor, had found a Japanese rifle
Mm.
laying up there and was fooling with the thing, and it went off. And it didn't only shoot this guy, it hit a guy on a boat over there, went through his leg, come over here and went through this guy's leg, and I think hit another guy on down over there.
Whoa.
So we hauled this old boy. They said, well, take him to the hospital ship out there. And so loading him out of this boat into the hospital ship, and he said, I knew I'd get a Purple Heart, and I'm going to beat you home. That was the last thing he said. I said, well, you dirty dog. So he got wounded in the line of duty, but his buddy did it.
Oh man, that's sad.
Oh shoot, there's a lot of guys die from friendly fire and things. From every side of the war too. What I hated to see when the war was over, they'd take these aircraft carriers that had brand new airplanes on them, and they would take them out there and put a charge in them and blow them up. Thinking there wasn't any use anymore. The war was over. And there was nobody to fight when World War II ended. It wasn't very long. They needed them over there in Korea.
Yeah.
But by the time, before the war ended, I saw a jet. First jet I ever saw. And then I thought, this will be the future, and it was. By the time the Korean War was over, about all they flew over there was jets. So we made equipment faster than the enemy could blow them up, and the other countries couldn't. Japanese, on some of those islands that we took guys to, the Japanese, they had tanks, but they had no gas for them. So they used them as pillboxes. And our tanks had plenty of fuel, plenty of ammunition, plenty of soldiers.
What do you think of like what's happened like with September 11th, and you know what you saw of that? And
I'll tell you what, this war, I heard a guy talking the other night on TV, a retired general. He said this war could last 30 years or 100 years because of the type of people you're fighting. And I remember the Vietnam War lasted a long time. And a lot of people died. And the sad part of the Vietnam War, when World War II happened, when we came back, we were heroes. When they came back, they were spit on. Nobody, I mean, it was just a bad, bad thing. And that's the reason so many of your Vietnam veterans, well, there was more drugs then. When I was in there, I never saw any drugs. The only drugs I saw was in China. They had opium. And the Japanese soldiers had opium. But I wouldn't have touched opium with a stick. That I'd read things about it, heroin and opium. I was scared to death of those things. So, and I never heard of marijuana or crack, cocaine. I'd never heard of them.
what I remember you talking about one time you were in China and you got snuck off the ship one night.
Yeah. I missed the Liberty boat back a couple of times when I was in China. First time, if you missed the Liberty boat, I was introduced to vodka, and it looked like it didn't smell like whiskey, and they mixed it with orange something or other, and it was real good. Well, anyway, I missed the Liberty boat. And but this time I had learned all the tricks of the trade, So I had to appear before the executive officer, and he gave me so many hours of extra duty. But the rule of the ship was you could pick your hours. Because if you had a watch, you couldn't use that. But you could pick your hours. So I picked my hours 8 o'clock in the evening. And they said, well, that's Liberty time. I said, yeah, I know it. But that's when I want to do it. Well, 8 o'clock in the evening was movie time. Mm. And you had a choice. You could either chip paint or do something else, and I chose to chip paint. At 8 o'clock in the evening, just the time for the movie to start, I started my paint chipping. Well, the guys raised so much thunder because on a ship, if you chip paint, the whole ship hears it.
Yeah.
They wanted me to quit, and I said, well, not unless I get credit for my extra duty, or because I'm going to, well, okay, we'll give you credit for it. Till the movie's over. All right. Well, shoot, the movie was 2 hours long. So, well, that's all I wanted to do that day anyway, because I was going to do 2 hours a day. Well, the next evening, I started right back, very same things. So I raised so much thunder, they said, forget it. Well, the next time I missed the Liberty boat, I went and reported to the exec. He said, and I know exactly what you're going to pick. I said, yes, sir. He said, well, it'd be more peaceful for everybody on the ship for you just to forget about it. So I never had to serve it. I'd had to serve enough extra duty on other times. And sometimes it wasn't even my fault. So there was they even out about. I remember one time we were loading ammunition. Now you got to realize I only weighed 120 pounds at the most, and the things I was having to carry or handle was 60 pounds. Now I could handle 60 pounds, but not very many times.
Yeah.
So when I saw it was getting to me, I got something in my eye. And they said, well, go to sick bay. So I'd go to sick bay, right about sick bay, and went to a place that I knew, and I'd go way down in the bottom of the ship, and there's a whole line of guys sitting down there. They'd all doing the same thing. So I found every hiding place that there was to get out of doing things. It was a thrill simply because it was some sense of accomplishment. wasn't an honorable one, but but I did my duty that I ought to do. I had a clear conscience about that. But I was sure glad to get home, and I'd love to go back. I'd love to take a voyage on the ocean.
Down to the Philippines and up to
Any place. I just love, because I loved when we were in the Pacific. Unless there was a storm, that ocean was just like a carpet. And the water at night with the moon shining on it, and when the boat is moving and that phosphorus in that water sparkles, and the porpoises. I used to watch them by the hour. The porpoises would follow a ship when you were going. They'd say, "Boy, that's good." Those old seamen. That we're going to have a good voyage. We're going to have a good voyage. Or if there was an albatross, they saw an albatross. I remember there was an albatross. We were miles out there, and this albatross was sitting on our yard arm. And we were sitting there watching, and I said, well, if I had my slingshot, I think I could knock him off there. And this old seaman, an old guy, he jumped all over me. He said, boy, don't you know? I said, man, I was only kidding. He said, you don't kid about things like that. Yes, sir. He was
superstitious.
Yeah. A lot of superstitious people in the Navy. They didn't, if you whistled, like guys will sit around and whistle. Don't hear much anymore. People used to. If you whistled in there, somebody was on you right now. There's only 2 people in the Navy that whistle: a boating mate and a damn fool. Boatswain mate had a whistle that he blew, you know, to get ready to give an announcement. They'd blow that stupid whistle. Now hear this.
Yeah.
Now hear this. It was in the Army. It was attention, but in Navy it was now hear this. They'd repeat it twice, and then they'd give you the
Orders.
yeah.
You said one time you were telling us about you guys would watch, like you were saying earlier, watch movies on the ship, and something about one of these high-ranking officers made you leave the movie one time to
Oh yeah.
take him somewhere.
Yeah, I had to leave the movie to take him to a officers club on one of the islands, and on this island, boy, I mean, I was offended, but took him over there, and on this island was a captain. I think it was Bird. He was now the captain. The head officers on all those islands were the file-ups, Pearl Harbor file-ups they call it.
Oh.
The captain on the ship, whatever, but a whole lot of file-ups. And he was the ranking officer over there, and he was at this country club, or this officers club that night. The reason I know this, this officer never came back. That was the last time I saw him. I saw him on later when he come to our homecoming, and I was curious as to what he would tell the guys, and they asked him why he left the ship. He said, well, he had chronic seasickness, and they took him off. What happened? He went over there, and he was a young ensign. Thought he was a hero or something, a big wheel, and they had a lot of Red Cross girls. Girls would join the Red Cross, and then they would go over there, and all they did was entertain officers. They were high-priced girls, and so anyway, he made a play for some girl on there, that officers club. She happened to be the girlfriend of this old officer. So the old officer come up and approached him and jumped on him, and he swung and hit the old officer. And they busted him. Took him, but he never got back to the ship. I saw the court-martial records. This same yeoman showed him to me, so I knew what happened to him. And when we went to the first crew thing we went to, he was there. Then he was there at the second one. And then he never did come back anymore. He got Alzheimer's. And we had a boat. The chief boatswain on the ship didn't like me. He just didn't like me, and I have no idea why. But there are some people like that. They see sign, and he always gave me extra duty and give me a hard time. Well, he was at the first homecoming we were at, and we had a lot of questions, a lot of guys. And we're talking about one bunch of people we hauled one time were Army pilots or Navy pilots, and we'd picked them up down in some place and was hauling them to someplace else. Well, when we picked them up, they told the officer, the chief guy, and these guys said, "Now listen, we got these officers on there, and they have a bunch of beer that we've got to haul for them. Is there any place that we could store it?" And he said, "Well, there's one place, that forward compartment right up under the front gun up there. We could put it in there and weld the door shut. It's the only thing I know to do." And I said, "Well, we can do that, and then we can cut the weld and take it off when we get up there." So we did that. Got up there and took those officers off there and opened up the thing, and their beer was half gone. And we never knew what happened to that beer while we were down there the first time we went to one of these. And they said, "By the way, whatever happened to those Air Force people, or those people?" And the chief said, "Well, I'll tell you what. said, I knew that apartment up there. Said, nobody hardly knew it, but at the back end of that apartment was a little hole that went up and outside under that front gun. I said, yeah, I've seen that hole up there. He said, well, I knew that was there. So we put the beer in there and we welded it shut. And for the rest of the time that it was there, this one guy and myself and the little fellow that they put on a rope and sing him down under there, he said, we had a beer party every night. Yeah. But that was the only big mystery they told. Some of them they wouldn't tell. That old boy Turk that I was telling you about that wouldn't help that guy out of the water. We were on down to one of our homecomings, and I was talking to this guy, and I said, "Did you have a nickname when you were on?" Yeah, he said, "Yeah, my name. They called me Turk." I said, "Well, I remember you. You're the guy that let Ramsey about drown, didn't you?" "Oh, buddy," he said. "Seriously," he said, I had serious rope burns. So I told all these guys that night we were having our meeting, and I said, "Hey, by the way, I want to introduce you to the guy who almost drowned Ramsey when we were painting the ship at Mogmog. There's old Turk here." Oh, we had a big time with old Turk. And I said, "You don't remember that?" And he said, "Nope." And I said, "Well, let me." He remembered it, but he said, "But I don't remember you." I said, "I remember you telling me you got rope burns, and you went down." So he said, I said, "Do you remember when after we were taken off of the ship and we put on this ship that was stationed over there, and what they'd do, they'd put you on there and then they would take you off and put you on other ships." And I said, "And Jones," I said, "You remember Jones from Chicago?" "Yeah." I said, "Do you remember Jones getting his hands broke?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you know how he got them broke?" "No." I said, "Well, he was messing around on another ship that was tied up to the one we were on. He went over there to see what he could steal, because he was a real thief, this guy was. I mean, he was a professional thief. Mm-hmm. And he'd gotten over there on this other ship, and they had a hatch that was probably a little bigger than that rug right there. And it had one of these hatches that you would raise it up and put a prop on it, and prop it up." And I said, he went over there and was going to go down on the deck, and he'd gone down and it was hanging by his hands, and that hatch fell, broke every bone in these 4 fingers. Oh. And I said, "And you and I went to the hospital to see him." I said, "He was sitting up there with his hands up in the air with wires in every one of them." Ooh. I said, "He couldn't do a thing for himself." "Yeah, I remember that." I said, "Well, you and I are the ones that went up there to see him." I said, "And I never saw him after that." And he said, "Neither did I. I don't know whatever happened to him." But some of these guys couldn't remember. You call certain things to their attention, they could remember it. And I remembered more things than anybody on the ship. And nobody remembered me. Really.
Isn't that strange?
Even I was the one that almost wrecked the ship, and they didn't even remember me. God, you get things on, but 50 years taken from time, 50 years later. It's a long time.
It's getting late.
Well,
Yeah, it is.
Well, Ryan,
didn't you?
I gotta go check something. Go ahead.
Right. You told us one time about. I think you said you were in a bar with some guy, and these guys were wanting to fight or something like that.
Oh, that was in China.
That was in China.
Oh, yeah, this guy was an Indian.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a guy, crew from another ship.
Mm-hmm.
He was a big, long, tall, real handsome guy. Very few words. And I was sitting with some girl there, and he reached over, and this guy did, and started making a grab at the girl, and I just knocked his hand away, and he was standing up, and he hit me. He swung a haymaker and hit me. My head was against the booth anyway, and I mean, it just almost blanked me for a minute. And I jumped up, and about 6 guys. I said, "Sit down, boy. You two are alone." So, and he said, "Sit down, sit down." So I sat back down, and this guy jumps back and he picks up a chair. Boy, I mean, the bar really come to attention. And what do? I mean, you don't. This guy picked up a wine glass and cracked it over the table, and he had a handful of glass, and he said, "We're coming out." And they just parted the way. He went, and I followed him. But the next night, half our crew showed up down there at that place. There wasn't anybody from the other one there. I guess they figured they better.
Get it out of there.
Yeah.
Tell us about the smokes, like the smoke screens they used on the ships. Like,
Yeah, they had those smoke machines, and they were really machines. They put oil through them. That's what they did. That's what they make the smoke out of. And I remember one night they put that thing off. It was an air raid. That was probably our best defense, because there were a lot of ships that fired by radar, and their guns could fire when the smoke screen was over, but we couldn't. But I hated them because I wanted, if somebody was going to shoot at me, I wanted to be able to shoot back at him.
Yeah.
But the officers knew more than men did.
Yeah.
But anyway, this particular night, and there wasn't any wind blowing, and that we were on our gun, and you weren't allowed to leave your gun.
Mm-hmm.
And that smoke come up, and it was so heavy you couldn't breathe. And this one boy started to climb out of the gun tub, and I grabbed him, and I pulled him because he was climbing off on the outside, and he'd have went right in the ocean if he had it. And I pulled him back in and drug him to the other side and helped him out. And by the time I got it, he got very, very sick. And I didn't. I never got sick from anything out there. I got some kind of down in the South Pacific. For a while, I got sores on my skin, and they talked about giving me penicillin, but I didn't want their penicillin, and they gave me nephiolate. It hurt like crazy when they put it on there, but it soon dried it up. I quit trying to shave, and my skin dried up. I didn't get any. They gave you shots for everything, plague, and some of them were pretty horrid.
When they were giving you shots, Dad said when he's getting his, it's pretty much you just walk down a line, they just keep shooting you.
That's what they did. One on that side, one on that side, and then they'd stop you and give you vaccination for smallpox. But they always give you those things, and it was arranged that every other morning you had early morning PT, physical training. Now early morning was before breakfast. So, and you went out and you did it for an hour. Well, they always arranged that when you had your shots today, the next morning was your day for early morning PT. Now they really knew what they were doing, because you went on that drill field out there to do your PT. If the weather was where you could get there, because when we did it, it was right in the middle of wintertime. And by the time that PT was over, your soreness was you could handle it. But you have shots in both arms that your arms, you couldn't move them. Many guys would get a real high temperature and fever when they had the shots. I was really, really skinny, but I never got seasick. And I had some boils when I first went in there, because I'd had them before I went in. And you never hear anything about boils anymore. They have so much antibiotics now that you get one, they'd give you an antibiotic and be over it. But that was before penicillin days. Penicillin came out while we were in service, because these guys got their venereal diseases I remember this one old boy. He he had to go take his shots every 4 hours.
Mm.
And when you were on messenger duty, and when we were on wheel duty, while one guy steered the ship, the other one was the messenger. You'd swap back and forth. Well, it came time to go wake up this old boy to go take his shot. I had to go wake him up, and he cried like a baby. Oh, I don't want to go. My butt's so sore now. And I said, you ought to thought of this before you
Yeah.
he got that disease. Yeah.
Really.
But I was really, really healthy. Never had any accidents. The Lord took care of me real good.
That's good. Nat, what? You were telling Joseph there was a story. I have another story I can't think of.
Did you tell us one time? I don't remember if there was something about being another ship that I guess had been half sunk or something like that. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, there was a LSC. It looked exactly like ours, and it was about 50 yards from us, maybe. We were both sitting there. That one was empty. There wasn't anybody on it because a bomb had been dropped, and it went, and they had one of their, I don't know, someone really goofed on the ship, but they left a hatch open. All when you have an air raid, you have to batten down every hatch. They'd left this hatch open. That plane dropped the bomb, and he went right straight down through that hatch, clear to the bottom, ripped the bottom out of the thing, and it sunk. But it was real shallow water there, and it didn't look like a ship sunk.
Huh.
We were sitting there, and they had an air raid, and a suicide plane came over the top of one of those hills, and that was the plane. That was the ship it hit.
Oh, that's a grace of God.
We stood there and cheered. Yep.
Oh.
And that guy gave his life and his plane for an empty ship.
So did you see a lot of the kamikazes?
Yeah, none of them hit us. I saw more damage from them. There was the USS Bunker Hill was by us, and it got hit with one bang bang, one on the back of on both of them on the deck, and it's bad enough that they had to send the thing all the way back to Pearl Harbor. The captain of that ship got so mad at his officer of the day that he and his crew those planes did it. He got so mad at his crew that he called general quarters every 30 minutes. 24 hours a day. He almost killed his men. Because you call general quarters on a ship that size, it would take you at least 30 minutes to secure from general quarters. And if you did, 30 minutes later, it would happen again. So the men never got any sleep. And he was still doing that while we were sitting beside him. And the USS Shangri-La that a good friend of mine was on, and I didn't know it, they got hit. They was on the other side of us. See, planes, if there were ships like that there, they didn't mess with LSTs. That was one of the real blessings of being on a small ship.
Yeah.
They wanted the big boys. And both those ships had to come all the way back to Pearl Harbor, but that time the war was over.
Now, when you first went into this service and you got in a boat and you went out to Hawaii and the Pearl Harbor, what did it look like? Was it still damaged or was it pretty fixed?
It's about they had raised by the time I got there. They raised those ships. The USS West Virginia was there, and it fought in convoys with us. And several of the ships were. And I was on the West Virginia. I don't remember now where we were, but I got to go on it.
But right when that happened, right when November 7th.
Yeah, December 7th.
Or December 7th, yeah. What was like the feeling of everybody? Because you guys weren't in the war yet, right?
No, but everybody was wanted. Everybody was mad, and guys enlisted by the thousands.
Even though you guys weren't in the war yet.
But we knew we were going to be, because the very next day the war was declared. But we had declared, or we were going to go to Germany anyway. We were surprised about Japan. Really, really surprised. So if Japan hadn't come into it, I probably would have been in the Atlantic Ocean. And that was no place for me. Too cold. We got up there, when we hauled those troops up to China, we had no this ship had been in the Pacific for so long it had no foul weather gear on it.
Oh.
We weren't dressed for North China. And we about freeze our core. We didn't have to have lookouts all the time because the war was over, and it was just that China war, and we weren't in battle conditions, in that, so it was easier for that part. But boy, we about froze.
We were going up to Canada. He told us about a guy that was put on duty. I forget what position he was put in, but he had to go to the bathroom and they wouldn't let him.
Oh yeah, that was a guy. Name was Elliot, and in fact, at that particular time, I was on lookout duty, and on the one the gun tub that I was in, we had 4 men. We had 3 lookouts, 1 on the front, 2 on the side, and 1 guy resting. Rest your eyes. These guys did it all by themselves for 4 hours. Well, this guy had to go to the bathroom, and he kept calling up, and the gunnery officer was the officer of the day. He was the one that was on duty, and he called up, and he said, "I've got to go." And he said, and the officer, now he's talking to the officer, and the officer said, "Hey, use your hat. Throw it overboard." He said, "If you don't let me go," he said, "I'm going to go in your gun tub." He said, "You do, and you don't know what trouble is." Well, daylight came, and the old boy was standing outside the gun tub. He said, "Mate, what are you doing outside that gun tub?" "Well, there's something in there, sir." "What do you mean there's something in there?" "Well, there's something in there, sir, and I'm not getting in there." Well, about that time, everything, the other guys, the game to relieve you, and so he didn't get in the gun tub. Well, that's come daylight and with work duty, up there was the gunnery crew cleaning that gun tub. But one thing that really made the officer mad, when he told him, he said, "Why don't you use your hat and throw it overboard?" And he said, "Well, throw me your hat down, sir, it'll hold more than mine." And that made him mad. He said, "For that, I'll not relieve you." He said, "Well, if you don't, I'm going to use your gun tub." And he used his gun tub.
Oh, man. Hey, you were telling us once about the doors open on the ship. And there was just a guy that you apparently didn't like, and the door had hit him or something.
No, it was a ramp.
Oh, yeah.
And what it was set like part of the deck, and they would lower the ramp, and then they would run equipment up it, and when they got the top deck filled, then they would raise it up, hook it off, and then they would fill the bottom deck. And then when they unloaded, that's how they did. They unloaded the bottom deck, they dropped the ramp on this, and they run down these tanks. And Ramsey, this guy who fell in the water, when he first went in, I really liked him, but we weren't out there very long, and his wife sent him a letter.
Dear John.
Dear John, broke that boy's heart. I mean, you out there in the middle of that water and your wife is going to marry somebody else. He got real bitter, and he became so bitter nobody liked him.
Yeah.
And I definitely didn't like him. And by this time, you're so full of hate. Killing and seeing people killed make you hate. I mean, I wasn't nice.
Mm-hmm.
And we were loading this ship. We had the top deck loaded, and what they had, as they would raise that and lower it, they had a man that would stand there and watch it, so if the cable jumped, they could send a signal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all at once, they just started, it was clear up, and it just started down, and the cable on Ramsey's side broke, and instead of him jumping off, he screamed, the cable's broke, and he started running over to the other side. The other guy jumped out.
Yeah.
He made it to almost over there. He got it to where the other guy would be, and the other one broke. Well, when it did, that thing went off and left him, and he came down. It broke his leg, and it tore his nose, and it laid it it ripped it up and laid it clear up on his forehead. Well, I didn't see it.
Uh-huh.
I mean, and I was back there on messenger duty.
Uh-huh.
And so the guy came back there and wanted a stretcher. I said, who got hurt? He said, Ramsey got hurt. And I said, good, I hope it killed him. You asked me why I was so nervous when I got home.
Yeah.
The war wasn't good for me. And then when they hauled him back, here they are, and he's conscious.
Was his nose back in his place?
Oh, yeah, he was hanging there,
Yeah.
just hanging there. And they come carrying him by, and I said, hey, Ramsey, I'm glad it was you. And a few other words that I won't repeat.
Yeah.
We went on to our trip wherever we were going, and when we came back, would you believe it? They stopped and picked up Ramsey. Put him in the bunk right across the aisle from me. And I mean, I was upset.
Mm-hmm.
I was sorry. I had all kinds of emotions. And so one morning, maybe it was 2 mornings, one morning, I don't know. Daylight came and reveille sounded, and Ramsey said, how you doing, Foreman? I said, okay, Ramsey, how about you? I never apologized to him. Wish I had. He died here just a little while ago, just about a year ago. But, and I just, to show you what war will do, we were on one place over there, and these Marines came down, Marines, and they had a Jap that they'd caught. And one of these guys said, what are you going to do with him? And a buddy of mine and I, we were standing there, and I said, let us have him. He said, you wouldn't know what to do with him if you had him. I'm going to take him down stockade. But I mean, when you are so filled with hate, and that's what war does to you, when you're not a hero.
Yeah. That's sad.
What was the closest call you ever had to getting shot or killed or whatever?
The closest call I ever had was by a ship that was sitting right next to us. They were firing a 5-inch gun right over our head, and those bullets are supposed to either hit something and blow up or go so far and blow up. And it blew up right over the top of us. And there didn't look like there was 1 inch of that ship that there wasn't a shrapnel hit, and not one person on that whole ship got a scratch from that. It was amazing. I knew it had to be God. That was the closest. And how it ever missed me. Or anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
What was the scariest you ever were?
The scaredest? Oh no, I was so scared each time. And when that general quarter buzzer went off, we would be in a room, in our compartment, pitch dark. And we would dress and leave that room and go out on that gun, and nobody ever turned the light on in the room. And nobody said, somebody turn the light on. You had everything laying in order where you could grab it. And every time I went, I never talked, because if I would have opened my mouth, I would have vomited, I know. That's how scared I was. And to tell you the truth, it never got any easier. It might have some people, but it didn't me.
Now, did you ever forget your earplugs? Or?
Never had any.
Oh.
That's the reason I got bad ears.
Oh.
Probably had contributed to it. I was on a firing range one time. They always send you to those firing ranges to practice, and right next to us was a 3-inch gun, and on the other side of us was a 5-inch. Well, now the 5-inch didn't bother your ears near as bad as that 3-inch, because it was more of a pop,
Yeah.
and it hurt, and I think that's probably what. Well, we never had earplugs. They do now on ships. They even have goggles now.
Yeah. Now, what gun did you usually shoot? The 18s?
40 millimeter.
Did you ever shoot the 50 calibers?
No, we had 20 millimeter and 40 millimeter on the ship. Now the 20 millimeter was probably the best anti-aircraft gun they had. It was a one man. You had one man to load it and one man to fire. You strapped yourself in it, and they were a really, really good.
Did you ever get to use one of those?
No, never did. Oh, in practice, but I mean not on ship.
action.
Yeah, no, not on ship. Yeah, it didn't kick. I mean, you strapped yourself in it and it vibrated as it went off, but it was, there was 4 guys on the crew I was on. We had one guy that moved the barrel this way and fired it. I was on the other side and I moved it this way. You had one guy putting shells in it and another guy passing him shells, and they would come in a clip. And I don't even remember now how many was in it. Maybe 8, 7 or 8 shells, and they would pop it in there, and just as fast as they could pop them in. I mean, just as fast as they could do it, you'd fire it, and then we had one right next to us that it was a double barrel. They'd poo, 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 like that. And the same thing on the front end. There was 2 twin 40s and 4 single 40s, and all the rest of the guns were 20 millimeters. On the battleships and some of the other ships, they had the 50 caliber, and they even had some 30 calibers. But we didn't have any on ours.
What all ships were you on?
What all ships? Well, I was on a battleship for a while, but I was on there for a school. I wasn't a part of the crew. I was only a part of a crew of 3 ships. I was on a destroyer for a while, but not as a part of the crew, transporting you someplace else. I was a part of a crew of 3 ships.
They were LSDs, most of them.
2 LSTs and 1 LSM.
What's the difference?
The LST is about 3 times as big as an LSM. 3 or 4 times bigger.
Were you ever on an aircraft carrier at any time?
Never got to be on one. I've got to be on battleship. Never was on a cruiser. Begun battleships and destroyers, submarines. But
No, what all did you have on submarines?
well, I didn't go any place on them.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I could have served on a submarine. I could have got a 20% overseas pay, where I was only getting 10% on that ship. I wouldn't have gone if they'd have given me 90%. I don't like closets. That's
Yeah.
what it's like being on. You have to be a special person to handle a submarine.